started with a red cup. Not the kind from college parties, not plastic and cheap. This one was ceramic. Deep crimson, a small chip on the rim. It wasn't ours. And it wasn't where it should be. It sat on the kitchen counter like a quiet confession. Like it knew something I didn't. My wife never drank coffee. I did religiously. But this cup? I'd never seen it in my life. I stared at it longer than I'd like to admit. We lived in a house too big for two people and too quiet for a marriage. Not the silence of peace. The silence of things unsaid. Of rooms with closed doors. Of evenings filled with separate screens. I thought that was just how things got when people got older, more settled, less fiery. I thought we were just coasting through a phase. But this cup felt like a stone in my shoe. I didn't ask about it at first. That was my mistake. Instead, I cleaned around it, left it where it was like I didn't notice. But I noticed everything. The scent that clung to her hair that wasn't hers. The laugh that had changed pitch. The way she started sleeping in silk again. Not for me. Her phone had started to live with her. In the bathroom, under her pillow. She used to leave it everywhere, open like a dog leaves its chew toy. I caught the first lie on a Tuesday. She said she was going to her sister's. I don't even know why I checked. I wasn't the jealous type. But something about the way she said it, the pause before sister, made me blink. So I waited 30 minutes. Then called her sister. She picked up on the second ring. Background noise, definitely not their place. I kept it casual. Hey, just checking. Did she make it there safe? A pause. Who? That was all I needed. I hung up and stood in the middle of our hallway like I'd walked into the wrong house. I didn't call her. Didn't text. I just sat with it. The kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but swollen. Like air before a storm. That night, she came back humming. Humming. She never hummed. Some song that sounded like it belonged in a different life. She didn't smell like her shampoo. She didn't even notice I was sitting in the dark. I asked one question, how's your sister? She didn't blink. Didn't stumble. Just said good. Tired. You know how she is. And smiled. Right through my face. That's when the panic started. Not the screaming kind. The quiet kind that curls in your lungs. That night I didn't sleep. I laid next to her and counted the lies she told with her breath. In the morning, I went to the kitchen. The cup was gone. And that somehow felt worse than seeing it. She longed for sparks. I gave her the stars and space. Now she's left with no fire, no sky, not even me. But the thing is, I hadn't left yet. I hadn't even started. And she didn't know I'd already begun to count down. The first move I made was stupid, I'll own that. I decided to play along. Act like I didn't know. Like I was still the same husband, clueless, steady, boring. I figured if she thought I wasn't paying attention, she'd slip. Leave crumbs. And she did. Oh, did she? She started dressing different. I don't mean more stylish, I mean different. Edgy. Risky. Like she'd raided someone else's closet and decided to cosplay a version of herself that I'd never seen in 8 years. Lipstick the color of dried cherries. Heels for going to the grocery store. And perfume new. Sharp, sweet, and bitter all at once. It hit the back of my throat like a warning. She wore it like a mask. But the real shift came in her voice. She didn't argue anymore. That was our thing, believe it or not, debating, teasing, pushing each other's buttons. But she stopped caring. I'd say something she didn't like and she'd shrug. I could have lit myself on fire in the kitchen and she would have walked around the flames to get her almond milk. So I made a plan. I took a Friday off work, told her I had meetings all day. Left the house like usual, coffee in hand, tie crooked, played the part. But I didn't go to work. I parked 2 blocks away and waited. She didn't take long. At 11:12 a.m. a black SUV pulled up. Tinted windows. Music too loud for a neighborhood like ours. She walked out the front door like she was in a commercial. Hair down. Sunglasses. That perfume. She didn't look back. Just got in. Like it was her usual ride. I didn't follow right away. I went into the house and checked her bedroom. Sheets were clean. Pillows fluffed. Like a hotel room after checkout. She'd prepared. Like she thought she was erasing evidence. But she forgot one thing, her laptop. I'd never gone through her things before. Never had to. But this was war now. And I was tired of playing defense. It wasn't even locked. Just asleep. I opened it, heart pounding. Emails? Clean. Too clean. Like someone who's just cleared their browser history and thinks they're safe. But the goldmine was in the Notes app. She had a whole folder. Codenamed. Full of drafts, messages she never sent. Things she wrote and probably deleted before sending on her phone. It was like reading her brain raw. One note started like this: he makes me feel alive. Like I exist. I wish I could tell him that without setting the house on fire. And then 5 lines down: I think he knows. I think Tyler knows. But I can't tell if he cares or if he's just too scared to confront me. She wrote about him like he was her ticket out. Like she was trapped and he was oxygen. I sat there reading her fantasy, this dream she was living inside, while I was outside, holding a rake and worrying about the gutter. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But something darker had settled inside me. A cold, quiet fury. When she came back later that day, hours later, I was sitting on the porch. She looked startled just for a second, then covered it with a smile. Didn't you have work? I looked her in the eye. I did. Then I handed her a printout of her own words. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Her face drained of color like someone had flipped her inside out. That's when things really began to crack. And trust me, she didn't shatter softly. She didn't read the paper. She stared at it, then at me, like she was trying to decide if she could still lie her way out. Like the truth was just another mirror she could tilt until the reflection suited her better. But I didn't blink, and silence, real silence, not the kind we'd been living in, settled between us like fog. Her fingers curled around the page. Crumpled it slowly. Where'd you find this? No guilt. No panic. Just cold curiosity, like I'd opened a door she was hoping I'd stay too blind to notice. I said, "You forgot to log out." She laughed. Actually laughed. That soft, dry laugh she used on waiters when they brought the wrong drink. "You read my private notes?" Her voice climbed a notch, not high enough to scream, just sharp enough to pierce. "Do you know how invasive that is?" And there it was, the pivot. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I can explain." No. She was going to paint me as the villain. Because to her, the real betrayal wasn't the man in the SUV. It was me reading words she never meant me to see. I stood up. Not fast. Not angry. Just, done. "You've been disappearing. Lying. Sneaking around. You wrote poems about a man who isn't me and signed them with your heartbeat. And now you're mad I opened a window." She didn't answer. I walked past her into the house. The door stayed open behind me. A minute later, she followed. "Fine," she said from behind me, her tone flat. "You want the truth?" I turned. She leaned against the kitchen counter, the same spot where the red cup used to be. Now she was the cup. Bright. Chipped. Full of something bitter. "He listens," she said. "He sees me. You don't. You think being loyal means being present, but you're not here. You float. You orbit. You show up when it's convenient." And I was tired of being invisible in my own house. She said it like she'd rehearsed it. Like she'd waited for the stage and I'd finally given her the spotlight. And still, it didn't sting the way she wanted. It didn't feel like an explanation. It felt like she was flipping the chessboard after she lost. I asked, "How long?" She blinked. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She looked away. "For months. Maybe 5. That was a lie. I could feel it in my teeth. She said 5 like a gambler guessing a number, hoping it wasn't too high to sound cruel, not too low to sound fake. I didn't yell. That surprised her more than anything. I just nodded and said, "Okay." She hated that. The calm. The acceptance. She wanted a reaction. She needed me to erupt so she could wear the victim cloak and say I drove her away. But I gave her nothing. Just the weight of her own words. And then she did something that told me exactly who she'd become. She smiled. "Guess you're not as clueless as I thought." That smile? That was the moment I knew the person I married didn't live here anymore. Maybe she'd left long ago, long before the cup, the notes, the SUV. Maybe she left the moment she decided sparks mattered more than stars. But I wasn't leaving just yet. Not until I took back everything she thought she'd stolen. That night, I didn't sleep. She did. Like a stone. No guilt, no twitch, no restless legs. Just curled up in our bed like the conversation earlier was a minor inconvenience. She had this ability, always did, to shelf discomfort like it was someone else's luggage. But me? I laid there in the dark, eyes wide, watching the ceiling blur into static. My thoughts kept looping one line over and over. Guess you're not as clueless as I thought. I wasn't angry in the way people expect. I wasn't imagining breaking things or shouting. It was quieter than that. Cleaner. The kind of anger that hums in the bones, that sharpens you. That makes everything you use to overlook suddenly scream for your attention. So I started packing. Not to leave, not yet. I packed her lies. Her routines. Her patterns. I traced them backwards like a crime scene. She always left on Sundays for yoga. She always came back sore. She always took her own car. Always showered the second she got home. She never invited me. I started tracking everything. Her calendar, her messages, where she said she'd be. I even installed a motion sensor cam by the garage. Nothing visible. I wasn't trying to catch her like a cop. I was trying to build the world she thought she owned without me. And in doing so, I found him. It didn't take much. One Instagram story posted from a bar she said she hated. A group of people. Clinking glasses. A reflection in the mirror behind the bar, her laugh, blurry but unmistakable. And next to her, the same man I'd seen in the SUV. He looked like a catalog model, not the real kind. Polished. Unremarkable in the way expensive things sometimes are. Button-down shirt open just enough to be casual. Beard too symmetrical. The kind of man who takes selfies at the gym and has quotes about discipline in his bio. I found his page. Public. Sloppy. His name was Nathan. He was 37. Worked in sales. Posted motivational garbage and photos of steak. And there, in between his curated masculinity, was a story highlight with a song, their song, apparently. A soft indie tune she once told me sounded like falling leaves. It played over clips of city lights and her profile, her hand on his arm, her head on his shoulder. That was the first time I felt it. Not heartbreak, not even betrayal. Disgust. Because he wasn't better. He wasn't some great love. He wasn't even interesting. He was just different. A detour. A thrill. And she'd blown up our life for it. So I made a decision. I invited her out. Just us. Friday night. Date night, I said, smiling like I used to. She blinked, caught off guard, but agreed. Of course she did. She thought I was breaking, that I was trying to win her back. She wore the perfume again. The same dress she'd worn to her sister's wedding. Lipstick like a loaded promise. We sat at the restaurant where I proposed. She looked stunning. Cold. Manufactured. Like a porcelain statue dressed for war. I leaned in, smiled, and said, "You know, I've been thinking." She tilted her head. That coy look rehearsed. Oh. I nodded. About what comes next. Her eyes lit up. She thought this was the moment. The grovel. The I'll change. She reached for my hand. I didn't give it. Instead, I dropped her phone on the table. Unlocked. Open. Her texts with Nathan in full view. Screenshotted. Printed. Annotated. Pages numbered. Her face fell so fast it was like watching glass shatter in slow motion. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call her names. I just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You were right. I wasn't here. But now I am. And I see everything." She reached for the pages. I pulled them back. "You don't get to rewrite this story." She didn't speak. Couldn't. And for the first time I saw fear in her. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. Because I'd become a mirror. And all she could see in me was herself. And trust me, she didn't like what she saw. She didn't cry. That's the part one keep replaying. Not once did she cry. Not in the restaurant. Not in the car. Not even when we got home and I laid every scrap of her double life on the kitchen island like a forensic exhibit. She just observed. Cold, calculating. Like she was already mentally editing this scene for when she retells it as her version of the story. And me? I felt nothing she expected. No fire. No despair. Just this detached, surgical clarity. Like I was performing an autopsy on a marriage that had been dead long before either of us admitted it. She paced the room while I spoke. "I know about Nathan. I know about the hotel in Hartford. I know you used my card for dinner 3 weeks ago, and you thought I wouldn't notice because I never check statements. I know he met you at the yoga studio and you told him we were in an open relationship." She didn't flinch. Not once. That told me everything. I said, I've got the texts, the emails, the reservations, the Uber receipts, all of it. Still nothing. That's when I stopped. You're not going to say anything? She crossed her arms, leaned against the fridge, and finally, calmly said, What do you want me to say, Tyler? You clearly planned this whole theater. You got your moment. That hit different. I stared at her. Theater. Yes, she said, not even blinking. You rehearsed this. The date night setup. The printouts. The big reveal. I mean, come on. You don't want the truth, you want to feel like a hero in your own little tragedy. I could have laughed if it didn't sting so much. Her words weren't defensive, they were weaponized. Sharp, clean. She wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to disarm me, to make me feel petty for exposing her. She walked to the sink, poured herself a glass of water like we were discussing groceries. You always thought love was about being right, she muttered. About catching mistakes and solving problems like puzzles. But people aren't puzzles, Tyler. They're storms. I stepped closer. No, you're not a storm. You're a liar. And a coward. And you set fire to everything good we built, not because it was broken, but because you were bored. That got to her. I saw her jaw twitch. She turned around. And you know what, maybe I was. Maybe I needed something real. You float through life like it's a spreadsheet. You think being dependable is romantic. You think silence is peace. But you're just vacant. You gave me the stars. Sure. But what am I supposed to do with all that space? There it was. She longed for sparks. I gave her the stars and space. Now she's left with no fire, no sky, not even me. And still, despite the venom, despite the cruelty and twisted rewrites of our history, I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't storm out. I just said, You need to leave. She froze. What? You heard me. Pack a bag. Go stay with Nathan or your mother or whoever you're using this week to feel alive. But this house, this life, it's mine again. She stared at me like she couldn't believe it, like she thought she still had time to spin this into a redemption arc. But not this time. You can come back for your things tomorrow, I added. I'll be gone by then. She didn't argue, just walked out of the room like a guest leaving a dinner party. Cool, dignified, heartless. I heard her suitcase wheels dragging down the hallway 20 minutes later. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't slam the door. Just silence. And for the first time in months, it felt honest. After she left, I didn't sit down. I couldn't. My body was full of motion, not the erratic kind, but the kind you feel right before a storm splits the sky. I walked through the house like a stranger, touching the walls, checking the rooms. Every object suddenly had weight. Every drawer held pieces of a life I didn't recognize anymore. The couch we picked out together. The wedding photo still hanging in the hallway. Her favorite mug, not the red one. That one was gone, vanished the same way she did. Quietly, like it never mattered. I spent that night awake. I didn't cry. Still couldn't. I thought tears would come once she was really gone, once the echo of her perfume faded from the bedroom. But nothing came. Just thoughts. Memories I didn't ask for. Her falling asleep on my shoulder during long drives. The way she used to kiss my neck when she wanted something. The first time she told me she loved me, and I believed her. But that woman, she doesn't exist anymore. She's been replaced by something colder, sharper. Someone who can rewrite betrayal into empowerment and call it growth. I started packing the next morning. Not out of the house, out of the marriage. Bank documents, property papers, passwords changed, joint accounts severed. Her name removed from every contract I could touch. I moved like a surgeon. Precise, fast. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of my breath and the tearing of old life from new. She didn't text. Not once. Didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask for anything. Not even an apology. She was giving me the silent treatment like she was the one who'd been wronged. Like I was supposed to chase her. But I didn't. I let her sit in that silence. And then, the twist I didn't expect. Nathan messaged me. No introduction. No pleasantries. Just a single line through a burner account. She told me you cheated first. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. Out loud. A bitter, full-body laugh that came from somewhere I hadn't reached in weeks. She wasn't just lying to him, she was building a whole alternate universe. A world where I was the villain. Where she was the survivor of a loveless, disloyal husband finding comfort in the arms of another. I didn't respond. Instead, I made copies of everything. Printed timelines. Screenshots. Recordings of her own words. Every date she lied, every time she said she was somewhere she wasn't. I wasn't doing it to convince her. I was doing it to protect myself. Because women like her? They don't leave quietly. They rewrite the story, burn the evidence, and come back as martyrs. And I wouldn't let her. That night, I dropped off her things. I didn't deliver them to Nathan's place. I left them at her mother's. Boxed. Labeled. No note. Her mom opened the door and looked at me like she'd been expecting a wreck. I gave her a nod, handed over the boxes, and turned to leave. She said, "She told me you hit her." I stopped. The sidewalk tilted. I turned around slowly, looked her mother dead in the eye. "I didn't." She nodded, hesitated, then said, "I know," just like that, like she was sorry, but not surprised, like she'd seen the cracks too and just hadn't wanted to face them. When I got home, the house was quiet again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't haunted anymore. It was mine. The email came on a Wednesday. Subject line, "Can we talk?" No greeting, no signature, just that. I stared at it for 5 whole minutes before I opened it. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't pound. That's how I knew I'd already started healing. When her voice, even written, didn't move anything in me but a faint ache in a place I no longer lived. The message was short, controlled, like she was dipping her toe into a pool she once set on fire. "I've had time to think about everything. I know I made mistakes. I don't expect forgiveness, but I think we should talk. Not about us necessarily, just closure. Please, closure." It's always closure with people like her. What she really meant was, "I'm uncomfortable with silence. I need to make sure you don't hate me, so I can feel better about what I did." Still, I agreed. Not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to look her in the face one last time and make sure I wasn't still grieving a ghost. We met at a cafe downtown. Neutral territory. Windows all around. No room for shadows or lies. She wore black, dramatic, probably intentional. Hair tied up. Lipstick gone. Stripped down like she thought she could perform vulnerability and I'd mistake it for honesty. She didn't hug me. Good. I sat down. She sat down. No drinks. No small talk. She looked at me for a while, as if trying to gauge the temperature of a man she no longer had the thermometer for. Then she said it. "I didn't mean to fall out of love with you." I tilted my head. "You didn't fall. You jumped." She bit her lip, took a breath. "I wasn't happy." "Then you should have said that," I said. "Instead of building a second life in the dark and dragging me through hell when the light finally hit it." "I didn't plan any of this," she murmured. And there it was again, the eraser. The way she tried to sand down the edges of her betrayal and shape it into an accident. "You lied," I said, calmly, repeatedly. "And when I found out, you tried to make me the villain. You told your boyfriend I cheated. You told your mother I hit you." She winced. Finally. I was scared. Of what? Accountability? She looked down. "I don't know who I am anymore." That I believed, because she'd been playing so many roles. The loving wife, the passionate mistress, the misunderstood daughter. She'd lost track of the truth. She wanted to be adored, envied, pitted. Never responsible, never still. She said, "Nathan's not who I thought he was." I almost laughed. "None of this is about Nathan." She blinked. "It never was," I said. "He could have been anyone. You weren't looking for someone better. You were looking for someone new. Because you were bored. Because I made life too calm. Because I wasn't dramatic enough to make you feel alive." She opened her mouth to speak. I raised a hand. "And that's okay," I added. "Really. I'm not here to change your mind or rewrite the ending. I just want you to know I see you now. Clearly. And the version of you I loved? She's gone. Maybe she was never real to begin with. She sat back like I just smacked her. But she didn't deny it. Couldn't. The silence between us stretched. It wasn't the tense silence of broken hearts. It was the silence of a door closing. She whispered, "Do you hate me?" I didn't even pause. "No," I said. "I just don't care anymore." She cried then. But not the way people cry when they're sorry. The way people cry when they realize their tricks don't work anymore. When the person they used to control has left the cage door wide open, heart finally unburdened. I stood up. She didn't follow. I left her there, in that glass cage of a cafe, surrounded by reflections she couldn't escape. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I felt something strange. Freedom. Not the kind you celebrate with noise. The kind you protect in silence. The days after that cafe meeting were quieter than I ever imagined they'd be. No more emails. No surprise texts. No manipulative apologies masquerading as emotional breakthroughs. She disappeared finally like a storm that had spent itself. And the damage? It was all still there, yeah, but the air felt clean again. I could breathe. I started rebuilding. Not the dramatic way, not like some movie montage where I suddenly ran a marathon or shaved my head and found enlightenment. No, it was smaller. Real. I fixed the leaky faucet she always said she'd get around to calling someone for. I took the books she never read off the shelves and donated them. I found her old sweater in the back of my car, the one she wore the night we danced in the rain like fools, and I burned it in the backyard fire pit without a single ceremony. The weight was gone. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. A week after the cafe, I ran into one of our mutual friends. Jenna. She used to say we were her favorite couple, said it in that way people do when they don't know what they're really seeing. She looked awkward when she spotted me, like she'd stumbled into a funeral wearing sequins. We made small talk, the safe kind, until she said, "She told people you cheated, you know." I nodded. I figured. She said you were cold, controlling, emotionally unavailable. I laughed, couldn't help it. Of course she did. Jenna hesitated, but she didn't say it like she believed it. More like she was trying to convince herself. I said nothing. She leaned in. Some of us never bought it, by the way. That stuck with me. Some of us. Because in betrayal, you don't just lose the person who broke your heart. You lose the crowd that came with them. The shared holidays, the couple's dinners, the inside jokes. All collateral damage. Some friendships dry up. Others tiptoe around you like you're radioactive. But I was past needing the chorus to sing my side of the story. The truth lived in me now. That was enough. Then came the second twist. She tried to come back. Not through me. Through my sister. Apparently, she reached out to clear the air. To reconnect. All the phrases people use when what they really want is to see if the door's still cracked. My sister, bless her, met her for coffee out of politeness. She told me everything. She cried, she said, rolling her eyes. Tried to talk about how confused she was. How everything just spiraled. She said she never stopped loving you. That last part made me physically lean back. Love? No. You don't love someone and then tear them down to feel taller. You don't love someone and rewrite the truth so you can stand on the ruins and call yourself brave. She wants to talk again, my sister added. She said she still dreams about you. That she regrets it all. But I shook my head. Let her dream. That night, I wrote something in my journal. I haven't shared it with anyone until now. It went like this. She longed for sparks. I gave her the stars and space. Now she's left with no fire, no sky, not even me. And still she wanders in the dark, begging shadows to whisper her name. Let her wander. Let her search for something in men who say the right things and leave their laundry on someone else's floor. Let her fall in love with reflections and wonder why they disappear when the lights come on. Me? I was already facing forward. There's more to tell. Because right when I thought the story had ended, I found something. Something she left behind that changed everything. It was in the attic. I hadn't gone up there since before everything burned down between us. Mostly because it was filled with her things. Boxes labeled in her handwriting. Winter coats, college stuff, old photos. I'd ignored them the way you avoid poking a bruise that still aches when the weather shifts. But now, I was done avoiding. I was cleaning out the house, deciding what stayed, what left, what got burned. The attic was last. It smelled like dust and time. Cobwebs clung to the corners. I moved slow, careful, lifting one box after another until I found it. Small, unmarked, tucked behind a stack of wedding decor we never used. White cardboard, no label. Inside, letters. Handwritten. Dozens. All addressed to me. At first I thought they were old. Maybe something romantic she'd never given me. Back when we were still pretending to be a team. But no, they were recent. Dated throughout the months she was cheating. One from the night she came home late from work. Another from the morning after our anniversary, which she forgot. The latest one, just a week before I confronted her at the restaurant. Each letter was a monologue, a confession, but not of guilt, of confusion, obsession, hatred mixed with desire. She spilled out her thoughts like she wanted me to find them only after she was already gone, as if she wanted to control the post-credits scene of our story. In one, she wrote, "I look at him and feel everything and nothing. I want him to love me, but I don't want to be his. I want to hurt him just enough to feel something again." In another, "Nathan doesn't even know who I am, but he listens, or at least pretends better than Tyler does. I lie to both of them now. It makes me feel powerful." There was one where she said, "I caught myself hoping Tyler would hit me, just once, so I could leave and have a clean ending." How sick is that? And the last one, the one she never meant for anyone to see, simply said, "If he ever finds these, maybe he'll finally understand why I had to break him before he left me first." That one stayed in my hand for a long time. I didn't shake. I didn't scream. But something inside me, something final, cracked loose and fell away. It was never about Nathan. It wasn't even about me. It was about her. A war she was fighting in her own head. And she'd chosen me as the battlefield. Reading those letters wasn't painful. They were liberating. Because I finally understood I couldn't have saved her. I couldn't have fixed it. She didn't want stars or space or even sparks. She wanted ashes. And now she had them. I boxed the letters. Sealed them shut. Not to keep. Not for revenge. Just to remember the truth in case I ever doubted it again. And then I made one last decision. A move that would end everything with no return. One act that would give her no space to rewrite it. Not in her head, not to her friends, not even to herself. The final part of this story, that's where I cut the thread. I took the letters to the pier. Not to the police. Not to a therapist. Not to a lawyer. To the place where, years ago, we once sat in the back of my car eating cheap takeout, wrapped in a blanket, pretending we were the only people in the world. Before the lies. Before the versions of her that began stacking up like Russian dolls, each one more hollow than the last. It was cold that morning. The kind of cold that bites even through denim. I sat at the edge of the wooden boards, box in my lap, watching the water move with slow, endless indifference. The sky above was flat and gray. Not dramatic, not moody, just empty, like I felt inside. I didn't burn the letters. I didn't toss them into the water. I read them one last time, not to feel pain, not to remember what she did, but to look her madness dead in the eye and say, "You don't win." And then I opened the box, left it on the bench, and walked away. Let someone else find it. Let it rot in the salt and wind. Let the truth sit in the open, quiet and unflinching, the way she never could. That afternoon I called my lawyer. The divorce had already been in motion, but I gave the final push. Property divided, papers signed, her access revoked, her name erased. No ceremony, no confrontation. I didn't even tell her. She found out through a knock on her door. A process server? Plain and professional. She texted once after that. Just one line. "So this is how it ends?" I didn't answer, because it didn't end that day. It ended the moment she started writing fiction about who I was and selling it to anyone who'd listen. It ended the first time she kissed him and smiled on the drive home. It ended long before the red cup on the counter. Maybe even before she said, I do, with that glimmer in her eye she thought I never noticed. You know what I learned? Closure doesn't come from understanding someone's betrayal. It comes from accepting that they betrayed you and walking away anyway. It comes from knowing you were real, your love, your loyalty, your sleepless nights. You were real even if they never were. And if you're reading this because you're standing where I stood, let me tell you, don't chase the apology. Don't beg for the truth. You'll only get the version they can live with, not the one you deserve. Walk away. Let them drown in the silence they created. Because in the end, she longed for sparks. I gave her the stars and space. Now she's left with no fire, no sky, not even me. And I finally see the sunrise again.